In this video, I'm going to be installing the new fence that I just built. I'll be taking the old one off here, putting a new one on. If you want to see how I built the fence, there's an assembly video. It's on my other channel. There are also plans available to build your own if you would like to do that. I'm going to get started by taking this part off, which is easy enough. I'll just put it over here out of the way. I'm not entirely sure what I'll be doing with this fence after this. Mainly, I want to get this new one on, basically to try it out. Even though I know it will work well, I would still prefer to, try it out and see how it's going to work. My eventual plan is to build a new table saw, a completely wooden one with a wooden top, wooden sides. Everything will be wooden, except for the blade and the motor, of course, and the other parts that I have to make from steel, but mostly from wood. The next thing to take off is the fence rail here itself. This is just a piece of steel tubing that's 2 inches by 3 inches, and it's held onto the angle with a bunch of 1/4-20 bolts. There are a lot in here, actually. I don't know why I put in that many. Really don't need them. Better to have too much than not enough, though, I guess. Except for when it comes time to take it apart. Okay, that's the last of the bolts. It should come off. The paint head is stuck a little bit. I'll put that aside, too. Okay, this rail that I've got on here is attached in a few different ways. I've got these big 1/4-20 screws that are tapped right into the tables here and the top of the saw, you could say. I've got washers in here to space that out because those didn't line up with the side tables. I've also got set screws in here that I used to lock everything in after I was done getting it all set up. A little bit extra there. I don't know if it actually made any difference because these screws were holding it just fine. But I've also got a couple of screws in here into this side table that I put in after. They're going to be a little bit difficult to get out because I've got my router lift in here now. And so that's kind of in the way. Well, maybe I'll try to get those first. I'm a big believer in doing the hardest first. That way you've got the easy stuff to look forward to. Worst comes to worst, and I'm not even going to try because I can't get in there with anything. There's not enough space. I'm just going to drill these out rather than mess around with them. Okay, that was easy enough. I messed up the edge of the thing there a little bit, but I think the new rail that I have will cover that. Not overly concerned about it anyway. Since, like I say, this is all going to be replaced eventually. I've got nuts behind here. I thought I tapped those in, but I've got nuts. I've got nuts. You might be saying, why are you doing this, John? Why are you getting rid of this fence, which is steel and obviously probably more rugged than a wooden one? Well, the fact is that I'm going to be building that saw and I'm going to be making plans for that saw. I've got a lot of requests from people for plans for my older saw, my homemade one, which wasn't fully homemade anyway, and it would be difficult to replicate that one. So I figured the best thing to do is to make everything homemade. And starting off with this fence here, and this gives me the opportunity, like I say, to try it out. This is something I've always wanted to do, actually. I wanted to do the original one in wood, but figured, it'd be more professional if I did it with steel. Okay, I've got the new fence brought over and the fence rail. You can see the front of the saw is looking pretty bare right now. I've got to figure out the mounting height for this. I'm pretty sure it's 1/8 of an inch down, and what that will do We'll put the bottom of the fence just slightly above the table. So if I push it all the way down, I can see that I'm about 3/16 of an inch. So I'm going to use the fence itself. I'm going to clamp it right onto the rail now and use that to make marks on the front of the saw here, the table part, not the wings yet. Slide it over without changing anything, get the junk out of the way. Make another mark. I set my square to that distance, so I'll be able to transfer the mark to the side tables. I've got a couple of choices here. I can put the fence in place, clamp it on tight, and then drill new holes through the fence and through the steel here, the cast iron, and then drive new bolts in and tighten it up. Or I can try to use the holes that are already here, which means carefully marking out their location on the back of this, drilling it out, hoping that you get them lined up. I think because I'm going to eventually get rid of the saw, I'm going to do it the easy way, and that would be to clamp this in place tight and then drill new holes. One thing I do want to do is make sure that I mark the location where I can put a screw or a new hole. I don't want to try to drill through this and into, part of a hole that's already here, or try to drill into the web of the table. So I'm going to go ahead and mark those now. All right, I've already done a few things here. I took a piece of very straight hardwood here. This is 2 by 4 inches. And clamped it on to keep the top of the tabletop straight, keep the wings and the table itself in line. Then I clamped on the fence where I want it to go. I used little blocks in behind the clamps to push them out, so that made it easier to clamp. I also transferred the marks from the saw to the fence here, picked a good location down for them to go in cleanly, and I'm getting ready to drill them. The screws I'm going to be using are 1/4-20 again, and they're these oval head ones, and I'm going to be drilling and tapping those in. But first I want to drill the countersink, then drill the hole. I find that gives a cleaner result. The hole is more in line with the countersink. Cast iron is very easy to drill. As you can see, it broke through pretty quickly, and it's not difficult to tap either. I've got a 1/4-20 tap. That was a 7/32 drill bit, I do believe. My taps, I always grind a flat spot on them so that they'll grip better in the drill. They won't turn around. That's in there, and then I'll just carefully So I'll just drive the screw in here. It should go in easily and snug that up, and then I can move on to the next one. What I do want to do though first is get a washer up and underneath like I had before, because the front of this table here is cut in a little bit and the washer will take up that space. Okay, that's the first one. I'm just going to carry on and do the rest exactly the same way. I'm going to do this one next, check it with the calipers, then I'll go out to the wings and do those. I've got all the other screws put in. What I've done is I've moved my hardwood down here to hold up this side wing that I have on here. Give it some support while I screw this on. I'm going to do the same thing again, except this time I'm just going to use ordinary wood screws. right, now that all of the screws are in, it's fully secured, I can get the rail back on. Let's put that in with the same screws I originally put it together with. And I'm going to space it away from the thing again with these 1-inch blocks until I get the fence on. Then I'll actually adjust this to square the fence to the table. Put it on. Slides pretty smoothly. After I finished putting it together yesterday, what I did was I took all the parts and I gave them 2 coats of water-based polyurethane to keep it looking good and make it a little bit slicker. Moves just as well as the other one did. Like I said earlier, the way to square this up is to adjust this rail back and forth. It's exactly the same as the way that one adjusted. I did add adjustment screws to the T afterwards, but I found those not to be very effective. Still, the best way is to have the T so it makes full contact with the fence rail, like this one does, and then adjust the rail in and out as you need to. And I'm looking at it here in relationship to the miter slot here, and it already looks fine. It doesn't look like I can really improve upon it. I can't feel a difference when I run my hand across it like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a test cut and see how it works. Raise the blade up, and I'll just get a piece of plywood here and run that through. Just gonna raise the blade up the rest of the way. This is a smaller blade that I normally use anyway, 8 1/4, and I'm just gonna put it in on this side, and it's just rubbing, and I'll put it on this side, and it's just clearing. So I think that's perfect, actually. So I'm not going to have to adjust this at all. But if I did, all I'd have to do is loosen the screws underneath, get a piece of plywood in this slot, clamp it onto the fence, and then wedge it up tight to one side of the slot. So that holds your fence in line with the slot. And then once it's there, all you have to do is tighten up your screws and it should be good. Of course, the faces of the fence have to be square to the table itself, and the way you adjust that, if you have to, you really shouldn't have to if you're careful constructing this and careful lining this up parallel with the top. Everything should be good. It should be square like mine is right here. But if you have to adjust it, there are a couple of ways. You can shim underneath the T on the bottom side. On either side, you can put strips of tape. It's not ideal, but it is a solution. Another way is to actually shim up the rail or change the way the rail is fastened so that it is actually parallel to the top. Well, that's it for this one. Like I said before, if you want to build one of your own, plans are available on my website, and there's a link in the description to them. Also, the assembly video is on my other channel. You should go check that out as well. All of my plans are easy to follow step by step, and it really shouldn't take you long to build your own. It took me less than an afternoon to cut out and prepare all of the parts. The next day, I fully assembled it and got the first coat of urethane on to give it some protection and also to make it run smoother. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.